Hello again, YouTube. I have previously talked about platform independence, but the directory structure associated with this CB getting started platform or project is totally it is in effect an MPLAB-X project, a DSPIC33 project. So it's not really, you couldn't argue that it's platform independent, and I just want to create a better directory structure to show kind of some sort of platform independence in terms of my GitHub project. So at the minute I've got a GitHub project which is called CB Getting Started. And in that directory is where the NB project. So MPLAB-X is based on NetBeans. So that's the project directory with all the settings for the project, which makes this directory an actual MPLAB-X project. And at the minute we've got our source in here and main.c as well as morse.c and .h. So this code is supposed to be platform independent, but it's sitting underneath this project, which is an MPLAB-X project. So I kind of prefer to move to something like, if I leave the same directory, and instead of the NB project being underneath this directory, making this a project, we create a directory called MPLAB-X. And underneath that is NB project. And we can have a source directory, but it only contains platform dependent code. So it's the main.c file. And I also have, I've got a development board. So I have MCUXpresso, which is an Eclipse-based IDE by NXP for their LPC devices. So in here we can have a project, and again a source directory full of platform dependent. So this source code is tightly coupled to this project directory. And we can also have morse.c and morse.h are supposed to be platform independent, so we could actually break it out in here into libmorse and have morse.c and morse.h down there. And these two projects will refer to that code. And this is our platform independent code. So that's what I'm going to try and do, and just to make a better directory structure. So I'm going to clone this project again because I think I deleted it. And if I go in there, I'm going to check out a new branch and we'll call it MCUXpresso because that's the new IDE. I'm going to try and include both. So in this directory, if I make a directory called MPLAB-X, which is going to be my MPLAB-X project. So if I git move the NB project into that same directory, and make a platform dependent source code, sorry, make a directory and then git move that code into the directory. So now that directory contains code which is dependent or specific to the MPLAB-X projects. And I'll have to change my .git ignore So everything is now underneath. I think a lot of this stuff is actually no longer needed because it was for previous build configurations which I don't use, but for the minute we'll go with it. So now I should have a project again that MPLAB-X is going to build, but because I've changed the location of some of the files, actually did I? Oh, I meant to move the source directory to libmorse. Yeah. So now if I better close that. I'm not sure that that's the right. Yeah. So now if you see there that I've got the parent directory CV getting started, and it's no longer showing up as an MPLAB-X project. So underneath that there is an MPLAB-X project. So if I open this project, now the directories obviously have changed. So morse.c is no longer under that file or under that directory. So if I just add a directory, add a folder, and the only problem now is that morse.ch doesn't exist at that location, it's in libmorse. And if we change the project properties, we want to change an include directory in the compiler. A relative path will be good, and that's us there. So if we apply that, it should find, yeah, there it goes. So this should now actually be back to where we were at the start of this exercise a couple of minutes ago. We've got an MPLAB-X project that builds. Now, one of the good things about MPLAB-X and the NetBeans thing is that I can add, when I add a folder from a new source folder into this project, it can be anywhere on my file system, which is quite different from what we're going to do now in terms of the MCUXpresso IDE, which is based on Eclipse and does things differently. But for the minute, let me just check. I just commit all of that. So I'm going to make a directory for an MCUXpresso project, and that IDE looks, because it's based on Eclipse, it looks for a workspace. Not a huge fan of that, but I just don't think it's as tidy as and we'll set it at that. Right. So now we need a new project. Sorry. And make a new CUXpresso C++ project really, but And the development board I have is this one here, the OM13. If I just click on this link, yeah, the OM13085. So I have that board kicking about if I want to actually put this code into something, but for the minute I just want to show that we're creating another project for another device in another IDE, so we're fairly flexible. And we're going to base it on LPC Open, which is a library of code shipped by NXP. Call it Morse. Use that workspace that I've given it. Now this is one of the problems. To use LPC Open, which contains all the initialization C code for the Cortex M3, which this chip is based on, I need to include projects in my workspace, and I'm going to include them from my, I think I left them in NXP. So yeah, that zip file is all of the LPC Open projects for this development board that I have, and I want to take that, and it's full of lots of projects, example projects, which I've no interest in at the minute, but I do need this board file for that development board and the chip file for the processor, the microcontroller. So those two projects will actually be pulled into this workspace. Again, it's not kind of the neatest, but when in Rome. And I'll leave everything else just as default, and we'll create a source directory. That's again going to be our platform dependent C code. So underneath my source file, this is all the startup routines, and that's my project. But I now want to, the only reason I'm doing this is to try and show that like Morse.C, Morse.H is going to be platform independent, and I want to add that into this file. So if I include Morse.H, obviously that's not going to be found at the minute, so I want to basically add properties. That's not giving me the right properties. If I go up there, Alt Enter, there, general, paths and symbols. I want to add that directory. Can I? And that's a, I need a relative path. Hold on a minute, I can't do that. I have to add, I'll add a link folder. So libmorse, I'll send, like, add a link. That should be a relative path, so that should be good. And then the other thing I need is in the include directory, I want to add another include directory to get Morse.H and all those other things. And I need, this is, sorry, capital PP. the project directory. This is all Eclipse way of doing things. I don't think I need that. So up to directory. So that should give me this the proper include directory. I'll move that up. So we're including morse.h there, and that should, well, it should actually build at the minute if our include path is correct. Yeah. There's an unused variable, but we knew about that before. The only other thing is I want to, let's just call this a API function. So we're going to call, just as an example, we're going to call Morse init, and we're going to pass it, get rid of this line, and we want to pass in the Morse on function and Morse off function. So for the minute we'll just make 2 empty functions. And this should, fingers crossed, build. And we only have an unused variable. Didn't even give me the unused variable. But it seems happy. So that's now, we've got 2 projects. The only thing I have to do now is commit this. But before I do that, if I go into MCUXpresso, there's a metadata directory there, and two projects that I don't want to commit those into GitHub because they're not really anything to do with me. They're part of this project. To get this project to build, you'll have to include those into your workspace, but they're not something that should be under my version control. So I want to ignore those. It's all right. So I want to add MCUX. So I want to ignore both those, or both the projects and the metadata for the workspace. I also want to I'll have to include the directory for the build is going to be debug. And I think if I remember right, let me just go into there's a .git ignore in this directory, but I don't think it contains much. So I'll just remove that git ignore. There's a git ignore further on up. So this is going to add the C project debug. It's not going to ignore debug. Yeah, that. Right, so if I go back up to getting started, that seems about right. I suppose this is really an example project. So if I now have this project, that branch, I'm actually happy with that branch. I've got two projects that are working. So if I check out the master again and merge in my Expresso branch, so that's all those changes pulled in, and I can now push that back up to the GitHub. So just to prove that this is working, I want to go back up and I'm going to remove that directory. And reclone. If I copy that again, so if I go into MPLAB-X, that should actually reopen that same project, and source files are there where they were. So if I build that again, that all builds. Now unfortunately the Eclipse IDE MCUXpresso, yeah, that's the workspace. It doesn't have any, because I deleted, I didn't keep under source control the metadata for this workspace, so I'm going to have to import a project, and I want that project there. Is that some projects cannot be included because they already exist. Now this is the funny bit. Why is it not showing up in the Project Explorer? I'll retry that. That's my workspace. If I just open the project, Right. So now if I go into this again, that's my main. I'm going to struggle to build this because I didn't put the board and chip projects under source control. So I've got to add those projects back into this workspace. So I'm going to add them from the archive, which I did previously. So under, I had them in programming, NXP, and that's the zip file. And I want to import just the board and the chip. So that's me recreating. So every time I would do this, I would have to recreate those projects. So hopefully now that means that Morse.c, or the Morse project, will build. And it does. So that's an example of we now have a directory structure and two projects. We've got libmorse, which is platform independent, and we've got MCUXpresso, a project for an NXP development board, and the MPLAB-X project, which is a project for the DSP, or the DSPIC33 of the cinnamonBun. It's a long-winded way of making a flexible directory structure for working on projects, and I may never compile and build this onto the MCU or the LPC device, but I might do it just to show it working or whatever. I really want to concentrate on the cinnamonBun. Thanks a million for watching. I'll hopefully have something out soon.